It's kind of funny sometimes when you're playing Star Citizen and a certain type of gameplay, it kind of reminds you of a completely different game. And doing these kill missions for Vaughn, it reminds me of Silent Hunter. It reminds me of the old days of playing Aces of the Deep and Silent Hunter and those U-boat games, because you're kind of going out there, you're trying to get these kills, you're trying to, blow these ships up and then escape, right? So you can go and you can get the next mission, and it's kind of like you're doing that again and again and again. And when you're using medium ships, like you'll see me start off using the Cutlass and then moving up to the Vanguard, and towards the end of it, I was sitting there, and before I kind of closed out playing with the Vanguard, I was like, you know what I should try? The Retaliator. The Retaliator might be actually good at this, and I'll get to that in a minute, but you're kind of leaving your port here, which is Grim Hex. It's the only place that you can really base out of when you're doing this sort of thing. But you have certain advantages when you get into your ship. Now, if you've gone and you've set your destination ahead of time, you can just immediately step out of the docks, and if you see anybody there, you can still fairly quickly align yourself depending on how the planet and the station are oriented, or moon in this case, and get out of there pretty damn quickly before anyone can really do some serious damage to you. Now, the Cutlass Black is probably not the ideal ship for this. In fact, I can guarantee you that it isn't. I mean, the Cutlass Black is still a great ship, and it's still something that I would wholeheartedly recommend in its price range. But for the medium ships, it is very much the Aurora LN of the medium ships, if you kind of understand that comparison. Moving up to something like the Vanguard, though. The Vanguard's got some pretty serious range, and when you put the right quantum drive on it, like I've been using the XL1 on both of these ships, so that gives me about 260,000 and change kilometers a second at quantum. And that kind of creates a unique situation, because when I'm going out long distance, as I do with these missions, I pick the missions that are, the furthest away. The idea there is that when I'm doing this, any fighter that might try to stop me while I'm doing these missions, I can just, basically pull a U-boat and just submerge and just get the hell out of there, just bounce and head back to Grim Hex. And any fighter that has a quantum drive that's fast enough to beat me to Grim Hex is definitely not going to have the fuel range to get to Grim Hex without stopping for gas along the way. And any fighter that has the range is going to be so much slower in getting to, Grim Hex, that I'm probably going to get there with a 4 or 5, or maybe even, depending if I go somewhere else like Microtech or ArcCorp, maybe up to a 9 or a 10 minute lead on that player, depending on what quantum drive they have. So you're very much playing from a position right now where, because of how these missions are kind of arranged in the universe, solar system, you do hold a certain advantage doing these missions. Like, you do have a lead, and even though there is the marker that tells the people who pick up your bounty where you are, it's before, when you were doing pirate missions, you were kind of doing them around Grim Hex, around Crusader, it was very easy to kind of track you down. But now, when you add this huge jump in the middle of it, that gives you, because of you're in a medium ship, that gives you a wicked advantage in that situation. And I mean, I guess it's offset somewhat by the fact that you're always going to be forced to more or less log out at Grim Hex if you want to repair and refuel. Though, when you're flying back to Grim Hex, what you can do is you can pick a line through the asteroids, and when you're still like 20 kilometers out, or whatever you quantum into, you can actually just go to full speed and just plow right past Grim Hex super fast, and then more or less just kind of skim by, see if there's anybody there. If there isn't, turn your ship around, bam, throttle in the opposite direction, drop your speed, and go in and dock in the station. If there is somebody there, continue out and quantum off to another location. You know, go quantum between 2 planets and do what I just did here, which is stop dead in space, mid-quantum, where pretty much no one can find you unless they take the exact same route that you did and then drop out of quantum at the exact same time to end up right on top of you. And then just go to a bed and log out. If you log back in and your ship is gone and you're just floating in space, backspace key, load back in at Grim Hex, wait 15 minutes for your ship to come back with free repairs and free reloads. Or if you're lucky enough and your ship's there, just carry on with your business and actually have a bit of a head start getting out to where your targets are. So it really does kind of look like this is going to be kind of like when you're doing missions like this, it's a little bit of a happy time. Another thing that's weird about these missions is, and you're going to notice that when I'm making kills in this video, is that the NPCs are just sitting there flat-footed. You know, in previous versions of these missions, they would be kind of moving around. You know, when I was on my alt and I was doing actual bounty hunter missions, for, you know, especially against NPCs, they were always twirling around. They were doing things. They were maneuvering. They were counter-maneuvering. Sometimes they were straight up attacking you. Whereas here, it just seems like these are unsuspecting NPCs who are like, oh, another traveler. Hello, traveler. And then it's just like, bam, you blow them out of the sky. The Vanguard was, it was a little bit quicker to kill him. The Vanguard, it still suffers from the issues that the Vanguard has. And, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, you know, well, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but probably a number of people out there would say, oh, there's nothing wrong with the Vanguard, but it's just, you wait until some of the other heavy fighters show up in the game, and, you know, then you're going to be like, yeah, about that Vanguard thing. And, you know, there's other ships out there that are turning up. I mean, there's a few monsters turning up this year. The Ares, both versions. The Redeemer, finally. These are ships that certainly represent a pretty hefty amount of firepower. And, you know, these missions, when they kind of play into that range advantage that these medium or larger ships have, you really end up in a place where you can kind of go out and you can kind of do your pirate missions, and if the law comes out and chases you down, you can just say, see you next time, Johnny Law, and just bounce. It's pretty fun. I have to admit, I have been enjoying it a whole lot, more than I thought I would. And, you know, I was looking at, you know, the levels that I would have to do, or the amount of missions that I would have to do, and just kind of trying to extrapolate how many missions that would be based on, you know, of course we're not getting numerical values like you've earned so much, you know, reputation towards Vaughn, and, you know, every mission gives 250 reputation or whatever. Like, we don't have numerical values, but the feel for me, like, looking at it and just kind of looking forward, I'm saying this is going to probably be a pretty fair grind. But it's one of those grinds that's just, it's kind of no big deal, and it's just incidental. It's just an incidental part of actually having fun in the game, which, you know, is something that, you know, we've talked about in the past, but it's something that I like to highlight because, you know, this is certainly headed in a very enjoyable direction. Now, I'm not particularly all that happy with the fact that the end result is that the kills are kind of easy, and that's, you know, that kind of doesn't feel all that great. But then again, I mean, for the rewards that we're getting, I mean, it's not like I'm getting 50,000 ahead for, you know, shooting these guys down, so it's not all that bad. I hope that as we kind of move up through Vaughn, that we're going to see some much heavier missions come into play, some heavier ships. I would love to have a reason to bring the Retaliator out, and you know, when these ships are kind of sitting flat-footed, it may not be a bad idea, but then again, the Retaliator is only torpedoes, so I would like to see some tougher missions, maybe some stuff with some Carracks or some Caterpillars. That could be interesting. Now, I do kind of want to mention the larger ships, the Carracks, the Caterpillars, you know, the Reclaimers and things like that. You know, certain other things that I have, well, except for the Carrack. Would I bring these out to do these missions, or the Hammerhead, very specifically? Would I bring this out? If I had a group of people, yeah. I think it would be fun and interesting, but I would have to be a little bit more on my toes, because then I would definitely have to be looking out for things like Harbingers, Retaliators, and things like that. I just couldn't be, you know, running around all willy-nilly. But you have to remember that when you move up to a ship that's as big as that, you have to be more careful, because that advantage that the medium ships hold over the light ships because of, you know, the range issue, which probably, you know, I mean, we could get into that, but I don't think we're anywhere near, you know, kind of really getting into the conversation about when CIG is probably going to have to knuckle under and change the quantum system and the interdiction system. That's something that is definitely coming in the future, but I think it's probably going to be another couple of years and a few more systems added to the game before CIG really just goes, yeah, like, this is a dead end. But I just don't think they're at the point where they're ready to kind of come to that realization yet. But with the larger ships, you would technically be surrendering that range advantage, you know, because when you look at something like a Vanguard or a Cutlass Black, with the right quantum drive, if you're willing to sacrifice a lot of speed on that quantum drive, you can actually put up a hell of a lot of range. I think, you know, the maximum range that you can get out of a Vanguard with the right quantum drive is something like over 400 million kilometers. So, I mean, you can kind of find a place where you could still have a pretty strong fuel tank and still have enough speed that you could actually chase down and prevent something like a Hammerhead or a Reclaimer or a Caterpillar from getting back into Grim Hex. You could lie in wait with torpedoes or something like that. That would be a lot more difficult. I think it would be video worthy and it would be fun, but it would definitely be, you know, challenging. But, you know, I gotta say, this is gameplay headed in the right direction. There are a number of issues and there are a number of things that need to be nailed down. Of course, there are UI bugs and all that sort of thing, but I do kind of stand by what I've said before, is, you know, this feels to me, from my perspective, as a patch worth playing, and it's been a long time since we've had one of those. Well, at least for me.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.